I knew something was violently wrong the second I stepped out of the elevator and saw the receptionist refusing to meet my eyes. Urgent performance review. 9:15 a.m. Conference Room 4C. Subject line in all caps. No body text, no signature. Cute. Let me set the stage here. My name is Evan. I had just wrapped 15 consecutive quarters of unprecedented growth. We landed the massive Horizon Logistics account just 3 weeks prior, a deal projected to bring in $45 million in revenue over the next 3 years. I built that entire deal from a napkin sketch on a red-eye flight out of Chicago. But now, suddenly, I was getting ghost texted into a last-minute meeting, like I was about to be scolded for leaving the coffee pot empty. And that morning, my spine was screaming at me. Martin's door was cracked open when I walked past his office. Martin was the VP of Human Resources, a man who possessed the moral backbone of a jellyfish. The exact same tone he used when he told our head of accounting that her role had evolved beyond her scope. That is just corporate speak for, "We gave your job to a 24-year-old with a shiny degree and an uncle on the board of directors." Anyway, I took the long way to the meeting room. That was the moment I knew for absolute certain what was happening. I slipped into my office, closed the door, and opened the locked bottom drawer of my desk. I flipped straight to Clause 11C. I ran my index finger over the ink initials at the bottom of the page. Martin's initials. Richard's initials. It was still there. My golden parachute. I adjusted my suit jacket, smiled into the reflection of the glass window just once, and then walked out. Now, if you have made it this far, and you are even remotely curious about how this all backfired on them in the most expensive, public, and gloriously irreversible way possible, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It keeps these stories coming, and honestly, watching their arrogant downfall again in high definition deserves a little applause. Don't you think? Back in the hallway, I walked past the massive mural our CEO Richard had commissioned after our Series C funding closed. When I arrived at Conference Room 4C, the blinds were already tightly drawn. Martin was sitting stiffly at the table alongside 2 HR representatives who looked like they had just dry swallowed thumbtacks. There was not a single laptop in sight, no printed performance reports. There was absolutely no performance discussion to be had. This was just the guillotine waiting for its cue to drop. "Evan," Martin said, his face contorting into a grimace that was desperately trying to pass as empathy. "Thanks for joining us on such short notice." "Of course," I replied smoothly, my voice completely level. "I always make time for my team." Nobody smiled. Martin gestured to the empty chair across from him, but I didn't sit. There was a single sheet of paper resting in front of him. Martin cleared his throat loudly, acting as if he were about to announce a national tragedy. "So, I will just get right to it. This decision is final and has been strictly approved by leadership." Leadership. He meant Richard, the CEO, who had not even bothered to show his face. Richard was the kind of leader who loved to take credit for the rain, but always hid indoors when the lightning started flashing. I nodded slowly. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't offer a single word of protest. I just took a deep breath, looked Martin dead in the eyes, and said, "Understood." Martin blinked in absolute shock. He had probably expected a massive meltdown. Poor Martin. He had no idea the kind of game I was playing. "I will need your building badge," Martin added, his voice trembling slightly, sounding almost apologetic. I reached into my pocket, handed over the plastic keycard, smiled politely, and just like that, I was officially no longer the senior VP of Global Accounts at Centurion Freight and Logistics. Except that wasn't entirely true. Not yet. Because what Martin didn't realize, what none of those empty suits in that room realized, is that firing me exactly 1 day before my massive equity bonus vested didn't save the company money. Clause 11C. This meant they didn't just owe me the original $4.2 million bonus. But they were going to find that out soon enough. I left Conference Room 4C looking like I was headed out for a casual lunch. Martin stayed behind, likely sweating through his expensive tailored blazer, praying I wouldn't make a scene in the lobby. I walked past my old office and didn't even glance through the glass. But what Martin, and especially Richard, never understood was that I never played by their rules. I only let them believe I did. Instead of heading for the elevators to go down to the parking garage, I casually swiped into the secure executive lift using a master passcode I had memorized months ago. I had spent enough late nights up there during the Horizon Logistics acquisition to know exactly who still possessed a soul behind their corporate NDA-stamped eyes. I stepped off the elevator into the hushed, carpeted silence of the legal department. I walked right past the receptionist, who was too busy arguing on the phone to stop me, and headed straight for the back offices. The trap was set, the bait was taken. Now, it was time to drop the hammer. The legal floor of Centurion Freight was a labyrinth of frosted glass and muted anxiety. I bypassed the corner offices reserved for the general counsels, those square-jawed men in $2,000 suits who only cared about billable hours, and made a direct line for the compliance division. I was looking for Julian. Julian was a sharp 30-something compliance officer who used to shadow me during vendor negotiations. He once asked me over drinks if he should jump to the private sector or stay and rot in corporate. His office door was cracked. I pushed it open and stepped inside, dropping my heavy leather folder onto his desk with a dull thud. Julian looked up from his dual monitors, blinking in surprise. "Evan, I thought you were in the Q3 prep meeting." "I just got fired," I said, my voice conversational, as if I were discussing the weather. "Effective immediately. No severance package discussed beyond standard statutory minimums, and absolutely no mention of the incentive clause." Julian's fingers froze over his keyboard. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking slightly ill. He gave me that same deer-in-headlights look I had seen in my own mirror the day I realized Richard was plotting to push me out. "They let you go?" Julian asked, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "Today?" "Evan, your equity package is set to vest tomorrow at noon. If they fire you now—" "I know exactly what it means," I interrupted, pulling up a chair and sitting across from him. "And so do they. They fired me to avoid paying out the $4.2 million performance bonus. They executed a constructive termination to save a buck." Julian's brow furrowed deeply. "That's even for Richard. Which clause did you say?" I opened my leather portfolio, flipped past the standard non-compete agreements, and slid the heavily annotated pages of my contract across his desk. Clause 11C. Subsection A. Read it carefully. Julian picked up the document. He scanned the dense block of text once, his eyes moving rapidly. "Evan," Julian breathed, tracing the ink signatures at the bottom. "Did you add this during your Q4 renegotiation?" Richard and Martin both initialed every single page. "I did," I replied, leaning back in my chair. Richard even asked me what the multiplier line meant during the signing. He was too busy looking at his phone to actually read the doctrine attached to it. Julian sat back, entirely stunned. "This clause is airtight. It explicitly references the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, specifically ERISA Section 510, which prohibits an employer from discharging a participant for the purpose of interfering with the attainment of any right to which they may become entitled." "But it goes further. Keep reading," I instructed quietly. Julian's eyes darted down the page. "It explicitly classifies a termination without documented cause within 72 hours of a scheduled equity vesting event as a direct breach of fiduciary duty. It stipulates that such a termination is void ab initio, meaning the termination itself is legally invalid from the moment it occurs and triggers an accelerated payout based on liquidated damages." I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "Because they acted in bad faith to circumvent a contractual payout, the termination activates the penalty. They don't owe me $4.2 million, Julian. They owe me 2.5 times the total value of the unvested equity, plus a 50% premium on my final year's base salary." Julian let out a soft, horrified laugh that was completely devoid of humor. "They thought they could short-circuit the payout by axing you 24 hours early. They honestly believed termination automatically voided the financial obligation. Evan, this is going to melt faces in the executive suite." "I am not here for petty revenge," I told him, closing the folder and leaving a pristine, notarized copy on his desk. "I am here for strict legal enforcement." Julian nodded slowly, the gravity of the situation fully sinking in. "You want this escalated to lead counsel?" "I want it to come from you," I said, quietly at first. "I want them to realize they are trapped in a burning room of their own making, before the smoke even reaches the hallway." Julian didn't say much after that. He carefully placed the documents into his secure outbox, locked his screen, and looked at me. "Don't worry about being on the wrong side of this, Julian," I said as I stood up to leave. The wrong side was the one that thought I would quietly roll over and let them steal $4 million from my pocket. I left his office and walked further down the hall. I needed to make one more stop before I exited the building. I needed to see Elena. Elena was a senior corporate attorney who operated out of a corner cubicle despite having the institutional knowledge to run the entire department. But today, I was giving her the ammunition to hold the company accountable. I found her hunched over a massive stack of compliance audits. She looked up, her expression immediately shifting to concern when she saw my face. "Even." "I heard a rumor," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the glass partitions. "Please tell me it isn't true." "It's true," I said, handing her a secondary copy of the folder. Clause 11C. Annotated original contract, the science addendums, signature metadata, and the ERISA Section 510 arbitration triggers. The packet also includes 3 backup references to the equity schedule that Richard personally approved in Q4. Alina blinked, taking the folder cautiously as if it were a live grenade. "You're terminated? As of when?" "Effective immediately," I stated. "No cause cited. The clock on their liability started ticking 10 minutes ago." Alina opened the folder, her eyes scanning the implementation memo. "Martin signed off on this, and Richards. They both signed it. DocuSign from their company iPads. The digital timestamps are verified in the margins." Alina read the specific language of the clause. "Evan, this language is surgical. You classified the termination as void ab initio. You tied it directly to a breach of fiduciary duty claim." "I wrote it while recovering from a minor surgery," I admitted with a shrug. "Signed it from a hospital bed. I knew Richard was looking for an excuse to claw back the bonus pool to pad his own quarterly margins." She shook her head, a grin slowly spreading across her face despite her best professional efforts. "They thought they were being clever. They thought you wouldn't notice a last-minute firing with no severance discussion and no legal presence in the room." "They thought wrong," I said. "Julian already has a copy. But I figured it wouldn't hurt if someone else started pulling the red thread from the legal side." Elena held the folder tightly against her chest. "Evan, this is going to be a bloodbath. If they try to bury this, they can try," I replied calmly. "But it is already backed up in 3 secure external locations with cryptographic timestamps. One copy is with Julian, and one is programmed on an automated delay in my personal legal archive. If my employment record is modified without a matching clause tag, the entire packet automatically emails itself directly to the board of directors." Alina's jaw practically hit the floor. "Are you serious?" "I am always serious," I smiled. "They like to pretend I was just a glorified salesman. It is truly amazing what you can build in the dark when the people in charge are too arrogant to watch you closely." I walked out of the legal department like I owned the entire floor. Not a single person tried to stop me. No security guards. That is the funny thing about quiet, corporate exits. But as I stepped onto the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby, I wasn't leaving the building broken, and Richard had just tripped the wire. Martin stormed into the HR conference room like a man auditioning for a panic attack. "We need documentation, right now." Across the table, a young HR coordinator named Kevin blinked like a turtle unexpectedly yanked from a pond. "Documentation of what, exactly, Martin?" "Evan's termination," Martin snapped, his voice shrill. "Something, anything, that shows we had documented just cause to let him go. An incident log, poor performance metrics, anything you can find." Kevin typed furiously with 2 fingers, scrolling through the digitized employee archives. "Martin, he's never even had a verbal coaching note. He's the highest performing VP in the company." Martin threw his hands in the air, exasperated. "There has to be something. A late expense report, an unapproved vacation day. Because legal just called me, and they are asking very, very specific questions." He stopped himself, rubbing his temples furiously. Kevin's brow furrowed. "Legal is asking questions about a standard restructuring?" "It's not a standard restructuring," Martin hissed, realizing he was losing control of the narrative. "Just keep looking." 2 floors down, inside the fortified walls of the compliance department, A quiet but deafening alarm had already begun to ring. Julian had kept his word. He had immediately passed the annotated folder directly to Olivia, the company's lead counsel and the most feared attorney in the building. Olivia was a woman who did not suffer fools, and she certainly did not tolerate corporate liability. Without saying a word, she picked up her office phone and requested a discreet, immediate, and comprehensive review of Evan's entire employment history, his contract amendments, and the exact timing of his compensation triggers. Meanwhile, back in his office, Martin was dialing internal extensions like his career depended on it. Which, incidentally, it absolutely did. "Jerry, it's Martin," he said loudly into the receiver, pacing behind his desk. "I need all the emails tied to Evan's Q4 contract renegotiation, contracts, internal approvals, equity schedules, board summaries, everything. Use my executive override." At that exact same moment, I was standing in the lobby of the building, waiting for my Uber. I was entirely methodical. I pictured myself as a surgeon who had just successfully completed a complex operation and was now casually washing his hands. I had left nothing in my office but a few old pens and a dead plant. I glanced back at the massive glass facade of the Centurion Freight Building. "Be so undeniably good that they are forced to respect you," my mentor had told me years ago. Back in the executive suite, Olivia stood silently behind Martin, who was furiously scribbling notes onto a legal pad, as if creating busywork could somehow reverse the flow of time. "Martin," Olivia said, her voice sharp and cold. Martin jumped, physically startling as if someone had just fired a gun in the room. He spun around. "Olivia." "Yes, reviewing the transition protocols for the global accounts team." Olivia held up the thick leather folder I had left with Julian. "Is this your digital signature on page 6 of the Q4 implementation memo?" Martin squinted at the document, his heart rate visibly spiking. But I didn't read all the granular amendments. Richard just told me we needed to finalize Evan's retention package so he would stay through the Horizon negotiations." Olivia raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "And yet, you manually initialed every single page." "Well, yes," Martin stammered, his confidence evaporating. "We were rushing to finalize the quarterly headcount projections before the board meeting." "It was standard boilerplate, right?" Olivia tapped a manicured nail against the heavy parchment. "Clause 11C. It is an aggressively structured penalty provision. It triggers a payout that multiplies the standard equity incentive by 2.5 if an executive is terminated without documented cause within 72 hours of a major equity vesting event." Kevin, the junior HR rep who had been quietly listening from the corner, spoke up. "Wait, Evan's bonus was due to vest tomorrow at noon." "Exactly," Olivia replied, her tone absolutely frigid. "And you fired him this morning, 24 hours prior." The room fell into a silence so incredibly thick it could have choked a priest. "Technically," Olivia continued, her voice slicing through the quiet room, "this was not just mishandled, and worse. The clause specifically cites ERISA Section 510 and classifies this exact scenario as fraudulent inducement and a breach of fiduciary duty." Martin sat down hard in his ergonomic chair, looking as if gravity had just suddenly remembered he existed. Richard and I, we were trying to save the company $4.2 million, he whispered weakly. Olivia's lips flattened into a thin, merciless line. "You didn't save anything. By executing a bad faith termination, you may have just cost this company upwards of $10 million, not including punitive damages." Somewhere, high up in the executive tier, a high-priority calendar invitation appeared on the board chair's assistant's monitor. "Subject urgent, legal liability, executive equity clause review. Priority critical, sender, Olivia Vance, lead counsel." My Uber pulled up to the curb. I had a text message from Elena. "The folder has reached the top floor. Panic is setting in. They are pulling your personnel file." I smiled, typing back a quick response. "Let me know when Richard realizes he signed the bomb." I put the phone away and watched the city roll by. They assume the lawyers will protect them from their own greed. But when you are dealing with a man who writes his own rules, the lawyers are just the messengers of your impending doom. The door to the executive boardroom on the 50th floor slammed shut, sounding distinctly like the heavy lid of a coffin locking into place. Olivia Vance, the lead counsel for Centurion Freight, stood at the head of the massive mahogany table. She wasn't wearing her usual corporate diplomat smile. She was in full crisis management mode, and she was not there to coddle anyone's ego. Richard, the CEO, sat to her right. Martin, the HR director, sat to Richard's left, looking completely hollowed out, a legal pad sitting blank in front of him. "Let us get one thing absolutely straight," Olivia began, dropping the thick stack of printed documents onto the polished wood like she was presenting evidence at a murder trial. "This is not a simple miscommunication. This is a ticking legal liability with a very short fuse, and we are the ones who lit it." Richard leaned back, adopting a dismissive smirk. "Look, Olivia, I know Evan is making noise. Let him rattle his saber. He is not bluffing," Olivia snapped, her voice cutting through the room with startling volume. "And this is not drama. This is contractual suicide." She opened the folder, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it aggressively across the table until it stopped right in front of Martin. "Page 6 of the Q4 contract amendment. Your digital signature." Martin didn't even look down at the paper. "I didn't read every single line, Olivia. Richard told me to push it through." "You initialed every line," Olivia corrected him coldly. "And so did Richard. You both signed off on Clause 11C. That includes the activation multiplier language, the restricted vesting window parameters, and the explicit constructive termination trigger." "Constructive termination?" Richard repeated, his brow finally furrowing in confusion. "What exactly does that mean in this context?" "It means you intentionally fired an executive under circumstances specifically designed to avoid paying him a contractual obligation," Olivia explained, speaking slowly as if she were addressing a child. "Which, in the eyes of federal law and under ERISA Section 510, is considered fraudulent and retaliatory. It is a direct breach of fiduciary duty." Martin went even paler, if that was physically possible, "but we fired him for executive restructuring. We didn't mention the bonus in the termination meeting. That is precisely the problem, Martin." Olivia shot back. "There is zero documented cause. You walked our top-performing vice president out the door 24 hours before a scheduled $4 million equity vest without a single legitimate reason, and you honestly thought that would automatically void the payout." She paused, letting the silence hang heavily in the room before delivering the fatal blow. "What you actually did was activate every single financial and legal protection he embedded deep inside that clause." Olivia turned her attention to the rest of the committee. "Gentlemen, this was not just a poor management decision. This was a massive financial trigger wrapped in unbelievable arrogance, and you fired it like a starter's pistol." The CFO shifted uneasily in his seat. He cleared his throat. "Olivia, is this clause actually enforceable in court?" "It is beyond enforceable," Olivia stated bluntly. "He has digital timestamps, encrypted backups, email trails, and verified metadata. That creates the undeniable impression, both legally and publicly, of direct retaliation. If we take this to court, a judge will flay us alive." Richard muttered something entirely unprintable under his breath and pushed his chair back violently, looking as if he were about to walk out of the room. "Sit down," Olivia commanded. Her voice wasn't loud, but the sheer authority in it froze him in his tracks. He slowly sat back down. Olivia walked over to the large touchscreen display at the head of the boardroom, tapped in her secure passcode, and brought up a high-resolution scan of the original employment agreement. She zoomed in directly on Clause 11C. "Read it," she demanded. Richard squinted at the massive screen. "In the event of involuntary or constructive termination without documented cause, within 72 hours preceding a scheduled equity vesting event, the termination shall be deemed void ab initio for the purposes of compensation. Arbitration shall be waived entirely at the employee's sole discretion." A silence fell over the room that was so incredibly loud it almost roared in their ears. "Who in the hell approved that absurd language?" the CFO whispered, terrified. Olivia tapped the screen again. The digital signature belonged to Silas, the chairman of the board. The entire room let out a collective, synchronized groan of despair. "Wait," Richard stammered, his eyes widening in pure panic. "Silas signed that?" "He did," Olivia confirmed. 3 years ago, right before we closed the Series B funding. Evan drafted the clause himself as a form of extreme retention insurance. Silas agreed it was entirely fair. given Evan's critical role in structuring our early supply chain infrastructure and securing the Horizon deal. And today, thanks to your brilliant cost-saving maneuver, it is about to cost us the GDP of a small island nation. Martin leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Why didn't legal catch it during the Q4 review? Olivia stared at him with pure disdain. Because you explicitly bypassed full legal review to fast-track the headcount projections. You were too focused on securing your own quarterly bonuses to read the fine print. Meanwhile, Evan was writing his own escape plan in plain sight, with your initials verifying it. The CFO rubbed his face in his hands. Is there a fix? A loophole? There is no clean exit, Olivia shook her head. If we attempt to settle quietly now, it signals absolute guilt. If we stall, he has automated protocols in place to escalate this directly to the board and our primary investors. He has version control data on every document. He has been 10 steps ahead of us since the moment Martin handed him his pink slip. Richard slumped back in his leather chair, completely defeated. What does he want? Name his price. Olivia looked at the CEO, a mixture of pity and contempt in her eyes. He doesn't want anything, Richard. He is just waiting for the check to clear. The phone call came in just after 1 p.m. While I was sitting alone on the shaded outdoor patio of a high-end steakhouse downtown. My phone buzzed once, then vibrated steadily against the wooden table. There is a very specific flavor of corporate panic that only emanates from the absolute highest echelons of a company. The kind of panic that vibrates right through the glass towers and shatters the carefully constructed illusions of control. I swallowed a bite of steak, wiped my mouth with a linen napkin, and answered on the fourth ring. I kept my voice perfectly calm and entirely relaxed. Even speaking, I said. Even, the voice replied. It is Silas, from the board, I smiled faintly. Silas, the chairman of the board of Centurion Freight, was a ruthless old-school operator. Silas had a brilliant radar for where the real power lived in any given corporate structure, and I suspected that was exactly what had prompted this direct phone call. He was bypassing Richard entirely. Silas, I replied warmly, as if we were old friends catching up. To what do I owe the absolute pleasure of this call? I will get straight to the point, Silas said, skipping the usual corporate pleasantries. Did you intentionally maneuver Richard into triggering Clause 11C? I didn't even blink. They terminated my employment, Silas. I simply made sure that I left a legally binding paper trail on my way out the door. A heavy, thoughtful silence stretched across the line. I let it hang there, enjoying the quiet ambiance of the restaurant patio. I have personally reviewed the clause, Silas finally admitted. The specific annotations, the cryptographic timestamps. Frankly, Evan, it is one of the most brilliant surgically clean risk shields I have ever seen embedded into an executive incentive package. I had very good mentors early in my career, I replied smoothly. Some of them are currently sitting on your board of directors. Silas chuckled under his breath. Richard is still aggressively insisting that the termination timing was a complete organizational oversight. I am sure he is, I said. And I imagine Martin is claiming he never fully understood the liquid damages multiplier when he signed the document. That is exactly what he is claiming, Silas confirmed. He understood the document well enough to physically sign it twice and push it through without full legal review, I reminded him gently. That implementation memo he sent to my team last December? The digital metadata is completely intact. Christ, Silas muttered quietly. There was a brief pause on his end. I could hear a muffled, urgent voice in the background speaking to Silas. The voice sounded suspiciously like Marcus, the CFO. Silas, the muffled voice said urgently. He didn't just trigger the standard payout. I just ran the final recalculation. I waited patiently, listening to the frantic corporate scramble like it was a finely tuned symphony playing just for me. 8.5 million. The CFO's voice echoed faintly through the receiver. Possibly more, depending on the exact market value recalibration at the time the termination was officially filed by HR. Silas came back onto the line, his breathing slightly heavier. Our CFO just confirmed what Olivia and the legal team were terrified of. Because of the clause's explicit reference to unvested equity and the 2.5x liquidated damages multiplier, your legally mandated payout is actually sitting just above $8.5 million. I didn't respond immediately. I took another sip of my sparkling water and watched a luxury sports car pull up to the valet stand. "Silas," I said calmly, cutting through the tension, "you are not calling me to debate the mathematics of the payout. You are calling me to assess the severity of the fallout." "I am calling you," Silas admitted, his voice dropping to a low rumble, "because Martin is about to be thrown directly to the wolves, and Richard is currently pretending he can't hear the howling right outside his office door. Olivia wants to settle this immediately. No counteroffer." "Why?" I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the warm afternoon sun on my face. "Because I don't need to, Silas. I played this game exactly by the book. In fact, I wrote the book. Richard and Martin just forgot that I never stopped editing it." Silas exhaled a long, low sigh of defeat. "They will ask for a formal arbitration hearing to try and mitigate the damages." "They can absolutely request it," I replied effortlessly. "But the clause explicitly gives me the sole discretion to decline arbitration, which I will. And if we risk litigation, you will lose," I stated, completely devoid of ego. "The documentation is airtight, and you know it. That is exactly why Olivia hasn't reached out to me directly. She is buying time, desperately hoping I flinch and offer a compromise." "You won't," Silas said quietly. "It wasn't a question. I haven't yet." Another soft laugh from the chairman. "You know, Evan, you always struck me as entirely too composed for the brutal reality of the logistics business. Too methodical, too quiet. But watching this specific situation unfold today, I realize now that you weren't calm because you lacked fire. You were calm because you knew exactly where every single fuse in the building was buried." "That is exactly why the board hired me 10 years ago," I said. "And that is exactly why Richard never should have fired me." The line went completely quiet for a long moment. Then Silas spoke one last time. "I assume you will be expecting the financial transfer by the end of the business week?" "I already forwarded my routing numbers to the compliance department," I said. "Understood." Click. The call ended. I didn't smirk. The $8.5 million was never actually the point. I was a precise man, and absolute precision always finds its target. 3 days later, I was standing on the balcony of a luxury suite in a five-star hotel overlooking the Chicago skyline. I was holding my phone in one hand and a glass of extremely expensive bourbon in the other. A notification pinged softly from my encrypted email inbox. Subject: Final settlement package. Centurion Freight. No public disclosure permitted without express board consent. I didn't even bother to open the NDA file. The numbers were officially verified. The payment had cleared my accounts. The damage to Richard's ego and Martin's career was absolute and permanent. Centurion Freight hadn't even managed to spin the disaster. No announcement of a new strategic direction. Martin was already gone, forced to resign immediately to pursue new opportunities. Everyone inside the industry knew it was a mercy killing to save him from federal litigation. As for Richard, he was reassigned. That was the cowardly word the board chose to use. It was exile without ceremony. I didn't return any of the frantic voicemails that came in later that week, and I was incredibly busy, a full partner track. But tonight wasn't about future negotiations. Tonight was about final punctuation. I sat down on a plush lounger on the balcony, kicked my feet up, and took a picture of the sprawling skyline gleaming against the night sky like a $1,000,000 apology. I opened my text messages, scrolled until I found Richard's personal cell phone number, and typed exactly one sentence. Clause 11C, line 22I attached the photo of the skyline. No caption. Line 22, if Richard had completely forgotten, was the clause's closing statement. It was written in my own specific phrasing when legal let me adjust the final language. Failure to honor the terms herein shall constitute not only a breach of contract, but a systemic lapse in leadership judgment, subject to total restitution, immediate board review, and permanent reputational consequence. They had initialed it. Richard had even chuckled at the wording when he signed it, thinking I was just being overly dramatic. I hit send, watched the screen fade to black, and took another sip of my bourbon. Just perfect clarity. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the story. It helps keep these stories coming, and trust me, your ex-bosses will never know what hit them.